Peace and good morning to you. It is November the 28th. It is the very last few days of November. I can't say it's the last week of November because it's not a full, complete week in the month of November in this last week. Just the last few days of November is upon us, and we are stepping and bussing down the month of December because we're knocking on December's doors. Like right now, we're knocking on December's doors. So, for all who are here right now, I say thank you and I appreciate you for just being in this space and sharing in this digital space with me. And I say good morning to you and pray that your morning was good. How was your holidays? That's an open dialogue question to where you can answer. How was your holidays? I pray your holidays was great. I pray that you had, you know, communicated with some people, have good and great family and friends over, or you went over, whether you went over to their place or they came over to your place. But again, like always, we always start in a spirit of gratitude. So I say thank you and I appreciate you for just being here right now. So we always start like that. Again, this is November the 28th. We're almost into December. So whatever you did not complete in November, you do have the ability to complete and get that knocked out or get that completed before, before December ever comes. Whatever your goal is and whatever your dream and your desires are for the month of November, you still have a couple more days to go ahead and carry that out. And again, like always, here at Consistency is Currency, your morning podcast of choice. For those that's listening in a podcast space, whether it's iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, was it Podbean or Amazon Music, whatever it is, again, like always, thank you and I appreciate you. All right, so we started to talk about vulnerability on Friday. But Friday was kind of like a weird day. It was kind of in that space of a holiday weekend, or it was just it was just different. It wasn't a real full day of things, but it was a full day of people getting themselves together and prepared for whatever they was going to do on the weekend. So I kind of touched on vulnerability as a superpower just a little bit on Friday, but today is the full zone, full expression of what vulnerability is superpower really means. So, open dialogue question to you: how do you see the word vulnerability, and what does that mean to you internally? Vulnerability, and have you ever been vulnerable? We're talking about vulnerable in the good sense. I mean, we can take vulnerability and drag it through the mud if we want, but I choose not to. I'd rather talk about the vulnerability that actually prepares you for what's next, that actually puts you and catapults you in a direction that is going to be beneficial for what your tomorrow is going to be and what your tomorrow can be with vulnerability. All right, so we're about to get started and to kick this off with vulnerability. And yeah, here we go. All right, so vulnerability is a superpower. Vulnerability is a superpower. That's today's message. Um, and for those who may be new to the platform, you're going to get words. You're going to see definition of words. I didn't really tap into the etymology of it, but I did just tap into just the definitions. And for those, again, with the inversion of definitions, red over white or white over red, pay attention to the words that are in red. If I say red over white, pay attention to the words that are in white. If I say white over red. And we're talking about vulnerability as a superpower. Peace. Good morning, Miss Brand. So, all right, let's jump. Vulnerability is a superpower. The definition of vulnerability, the first definition, that is, it says the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. But what I want you to pay attention to is the inversion of white over red, right? The quality or state of being exposed to the possibility. That's the vulnerability that I want you to pay attention to. Because all the other stuff, people they're talking about being attacked or harmed, and either physically or emotionally, whatever that is. But we're focusing on the vulnerability that gives you the quality or state of being exposed to possibility. And the next definition of vulnerability, it says the state of being open to injury or appearing as if you are. Again, we're not focusing on it's easy to talk about the negativity bias and things of that nature, but let's talk about the good stuff, because we're talking about the inversion is the red over white, which is the state of being open. Vulnerability is definitely going to open some things for you, whether it's going to open your heart and open your mind and open your ears and open yourself to be able to receive just by being in that space and being in that moment of vulnerability. Again, the inversion is red over white, which is the state of being open. So what have you been closed off to? I mean, again, here it is, November the 28th. What have you been closed off to that vulnerability has opened you up to it? Like for your own accomplishments, goals, dreams, desires. What initially were you closed off to? But when you have transitioned to the state of being open, that actually has opened you up for the greater good, or opened you up to increase your opportunity of doing something bigger, better, and greater. Because only those who understand what vulnerability has done, has been beneficial for them, can only truly honestly answer that question. And even answering of the question could actually possibly open you up to more things that are to come. Peace. Good morning, Mr. Morton. It will open up more things for you just when you acknowledge that being vulnerable is the state of being open. Because when you take the state of being closed, that means you're closing yourself off for whatever is going to be your future you, from whatever is going to be your future place or destination, for whatever it is going to be the future desires of your heart. But because you have closed yourself off from even acknowledging what vulnerability can do for you, you have already shut the door that was supposed to be open for you. You shut that door yourself, not anybody else, because that comes into a place of accountability when you're understanding what vulnerability is and can do for you. And the last definition of vulnerability, and then we're going to step into the deep dive, because vulnerability, again, the last definition is willingness to show emotion or to allow one's weakness to be seen or known, willing to risk. And the inversion on this is willingness to show emotion or willingness to risk. How do you see that inversion? Again, it's white over red. Willingness to show an emotion or willingness to risk. I think a lot of times we shut ourselves out from. I can say I'll speak for me. I can't speak for anybody else. Like, there are times when I shut myself out from emotions, and I can honestly say I can sit here and be vulnerable to the conversation to say, yes, there are times to where I shut myself off from feeling certain emotions, honestly, because I either I don't want to deal with it, or I don't know how to deal with it. So I shut myself off from it. That's just me being vulnerable in this moment. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. But your vulnerability will allow you to be able to sit in conversations and be willing to show emotions, even if it's just willing to sit and listen, or to sit and be uh, able to open yourself up to have the conversation. That's where the willingness to risk comes from. Like, what have you not been willing to risk, or what emotions have are you continuing to fight? Like right now, with you, like again, the year is almost over, but what haven't you done that you should do before you close the year out? Who is that person that you should communicate with before you close this year out? What conversations that you need to have before you close this year out? What are you willing to risk, or what are you not willing to risk by not having this conversation? Like, how much are you really going to lose if you don't have this conversation? I mean, that can only be answered by you, not by me. All I'm doing is stepping into what I'm supposed to do by having these open dialogue conversations, possibly with myself, just in an open forum to where you can hear it. But hopefully there's something that resonates with you, that you can be like, you know what? I, I I'm feeling vulnerable right now by something that I heard you say. Like, what are you willing to show when it's time for it to be shown? Like, can you see yourself acknowledging that vulnerability can be a superpower? That vulnerability can open a door that you have personally closed. And because you have personally closed it, it's going to take you to personally open it. I don't care what you said, what somebody did to you this year. Damn, it's November. Like, are you still going to carry that over into the next month, or are you going to face it and be willing to take the risk to open yourself up to the conversation in order for your emotions to not carry you through the conversation, but to allow your emotions to open you up to the conversation, to create a dialogue that is worth the risk, because it can offer you much more detriment by not having it. I don't know who that was for, but hey, if that's for you, put the shoe on. It's your size. Go ahead and tie it up. Put a little pretty bow on it. Double knot that so you don't take your shoes off until you're ready to face it. Walk in it. The willingness to show emotions, or the willingness to work. So let's go ahead and deep dive this. That vulnerability is a superpower. Vulnerability is like getting to know ourselves. How many of you can relate to that? Vulnerability is getting to know ourselves. Only those who are willing to say, I'm learning more about myself every day. That's the person that can answer that. And to say that in truth, vulnerability is getting to know yourself. You don't have to wait for somebody else to get to know you, because when you get to know you, it doesn't matter what somebody else says outside of you, because it's you getting to learn more about what makes you cry, what makes you happy, what makes you walk, what makes you sit down, what makes you speak, what makes you sing, what makes you talk, what makes you silent. That is you getting to know you. Vulnerability is also getting to know your story and no longer running from it. Like, that can be a full mouthpiece of something right there, because vulnerability is also getting to know your story and no longer running away from it. Yes, you've been hurt. Yes, you understand what pain is. Yes, you understand what trauma is, but are you vulnerable enough to understand your story and no longer run from it? I don't care who hurt you. I don't care what he said. I don't care what she said, but what do you say? Are you vulnerable enough to tell your story and no longer run from it? Vulnerability is also those inner imperfections. Like, I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be me. I just have to understand me. I just have to be open to me and know that I am not perfect, but in my imperfections, I've strived to be great. I strive to learn more about me. I strive to no longer run away from my story, but run to my story, to run through it, to create new stories, to being vulnerable. So, quick story. Like, for those who know that's been following, the podcast Success. Well, I was about to say Success Knows My Name. That's another podcast of mine. Of consistency is currency. Know that I had a goal to have complete my certification, um, digital associate certification from Meta. So I'm gonna tell you where that came from. That came from a place of vulnerability. I completed, so I passed I got my certification yesterday. So clap it up, whatever. So I passed yesterday, but I initially had it as a goal to have it completed by 1 November, and I started doing everything else, what everybody else wanted, what everybody else needed. I was opening myself up to ensuring that I'm doing for everybody else, but not sitting myself down doing it for me, because I told myself I will have it done by 1 November. And the backstory of where that came from, because I went to a Meta workshop, and up on stage was someone that I knew from when I started this journey with social media, and I seen him up there and he was instructing and teaching, and I was like, dude, I know you. I remember you. I remember when you started. I remember when we first started. And then he's up there pitching and talking about social media, and I'm sitting there like I know the same thing you know. And I was like, and we we sat down, after it, and I was like, how did you get to this point? He was like, I got certified. And I'm sitting there like, this joker. I can get certified, but I was it wasn't apparent to me to go back or to even get certified. And I had to look at him not out of, I was proud of him. Yeah, I told him, I said, man, I'm so proud of you. And then after that, I felt convicted. I said, I'm proud of you to him, but I'm convicted inside internally for me. And I told myself I'm going to have this done by 1 November. Didn't do it. Didn't complete it. I talked the talk, but my walk was trash. And then I was like, you know what? I'm serious about this, and I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to be certified before 1 December. So I set boundaries. I set the conditions that I will have this done. But you know what I had to be vulnerable to? Going back and learning and being vulnerable to failing. I'm just being transparent, because I had to fail multiple pre-exams before I knew success. So I was vulnerable to learning and being okay with acknowledging that if I'm ever going to get to the state of completion, I have to set the conditions. And even in the conditions, I was not as successful as I thought I was, when I thought I'm gonna go ahead and take this test. I didn't study like I know I supposed to. So I started taking pre-exams, and I ain't gonna lie, I got lucky on a couple of them. But then when you bomb the pre-exam and you get 66 percent, and you like, man, that sucks. Like, it's terrible. So I had to fail pre-exams in order for me to become successful. I had to open myself up to learning before I was ever to become successful at securing the certification. So I started to measure my success off of someone else's accomplishments. And I had to look at that for myself and be vulnerable to be open enough to say that I started to measure my success off of someone else's accomplishment. Like, have you ever done that? Because to even get into that state of mind, that takes some vulnerability to even say that out loud. Like, I've started to measure my success off of someone else's accomplishments. Like, I don't know what he went through. I don't know what he did. I just knew I seen him up on stage. But then I had to look at me for me and to look at my accomplishments for the things and the tasks that I put out for myself that I did not do. So the conviction had to stir something up inside of me in order for me to correct that feeling, to me to no longer feel that way again, because I should not had measured my success off of his accomplishments. He took the risk. I didn't take the risk. And it wasn't fair for me to not take the risk. I had to risk long hours in the day and taking so many exams and studying and failing at exams and taking a retake and passing those exams. I had to be vulnerable enough to learn there was more to it to just having a certifications. There are things that you have to go through. Just like Michael Jordan, he had to what? Michael Jordan had to become vulnerable to missing those 9,000 shots before we began to know who Michael Jordan was when he started hitting those winning jumpers. And and when we learn to embrace our experiences, it will give us the superpower to take the next step of being brave, to show ourselves what true freedom is. Like, yeah, I feel free that I've accomplished the task way before the condition of the goal that I had of 1 December. I feel free, yes. But I also know what not having it meant for me. Not completing that task meant to me. So vulnerability will begin to open doors and will allow us to get to the gateways of our true greatness. It will teach us to trust ourselves by connecting our dreams to our goals, not being afraid to take risk with who we are or where we're going. A lot of times, most of us men, we look at vulnerability as a word and we think it's a sign of being soft. But when we begin to grow and to be more mature, we actually learn that vulnerability is an internal examination than it is of an outer exterior point of view. And I've begun to notice that the more I failed, the more I have room to succeed. Like, for all those exams I failed, just to get the email of congratulations made all those failures that much more worth it. It gives me more, it just gave me more room to grow. It gave me more room to try. It gave me the energy to say, you know what? You're going to get this done. No matter what you say, there's actions that has to go along with it to execute and get it done. And it just gave me more room to seek freedom. It gave me more room to seek passing and accomplishing more pre-tests and exams before I got to the final exam. Like, where are you at in your final examination of yourself? Don't forfeit your greatness for pride. And I'm going to say that again. Do not forfeit your greatness for pride. Allow yourself to learn more about being vulnerable, to learn about your greatness. Yes, being vulnerable can hurt. It can hold you. It can hold you, and it makes you feel like pride is something that you have to hold on to, but it don't, because pride actually hurts worse. That vulnerability can give you freedom too, or vulnerability can walk you through the doors of freedom, but pride can keep you behind that door and keep you hesitant of turning the knob and seeing what's on the other side of vulnerability. Vulnerability is opening up to say, hey, I could have delivered that a different way. Hey, I was wrong. Hey, my pride got in the way. Vulnerability will get you to that point to say that, but pride will have you saying nothing. Pride will keep you stubborn. That vulnerability can set you free. Like, we all can learn that vulnerability is a superpower. And when we acknowledge that vulnerability is a superpower, it can open us up to so many greater things. Because again, it's an internal look. It is something that you look at you, inside of you. Not what somebody else is saying to you, but what are you saying to yourself? Are you vulnerable enough to yourself to speak to you, to open yourself up, to take risk, to be great, to open yourself up, to be vulnerable, to try? What haven't you tried this year that you knew you had it in plan for yourself to do? You still have time. You still can complete it, but don't walk away from it. Walk towards it. Walk through that door of vulnerability, because after you have walked through that door of vulnerability, you will walk through the threshold of freedom. You will walk into your purpose. You will walk away from your fears, but you will walk into your tomorrow, because again, what you do today will prepare you for what tomorrow may look like, but it's the process that you take right now. All right. It's up to you. I can't put vulnerability in a box, but I can muzzle my pride, which will open up more doors for you to walk through. Vulnerability is also a key to freedom, and you'll be blessed. I appreciate you for being here at Consistency is Currency, your morning podcast of choice. Y'all be blessed and be okay with being vulnerable, because it may just be what you need for tomorrow. Peace.